This was just Ukraine trying to drag the rest of the world into World War III.
I built this thing from the bottom, they tore it down, I rebuilt it. I give myself a task, you can bet your ass I fulfill it. Yeah, man, I'm talking about Willis, one of the realest to try. My family.
Pulling the Thread podcast episode what?
132.
What?
132?
120. Podcast episode 120. All right, so Ukraine
What about it?
got some balls and some technology and just decided to put a truck together, drive 150 miles into Russia, open that, and destroy a bunch of Russian aircraft while on the tarmac at 3 bases.
Yeah, no, all that happened.
Yeah, who did that?
The Ukrainians did it.
Come on.
Zelensky did it.
Yeah, who told Zelensky go ahead and do this? How did he just that day, he just got the balls?
We didn't. You have to understand, this is a strategic move by fucking Ukraine to escalate the war in Ukraine.
So
Zelensky knows, I mean, because he's already trying to sue the United States in the
Why don't we
world
just kill
court.
Zelensky then?
I mean, there's a possibility that that may happen, but we have a large group of individuals within our political system that want to continue to back this war in Ukraine because they're making a lot of money off of it. Understand, those fucking senators and shit that are rattling the sabers,
Lindsey
they're
Graham.
doing it. He's doing it because he's making money. He's fucking making tons of money off of this war in Ukraine. He didn't give two shits about Ukraine. This was a strategic move by Ukraine to escalate the war. That's all it was. It was a strategic move to escalate the war. It didn't have anything to do with winning the war, just escalating the war. Because again, what you have to do is you have to evaluate the targets they picked. Every single day, right now, every single day on the ground in Ukraine, they're losing ground. The Russians are taking ground. Yes, they're paying a heavy price for the ground they're taking, but they're taking the ground.
Who is?
The Russians.
Russians, yes.
If we just go back to pre-election.
Yeah, Ukraine's not winning this.
Yeah, if we just go back pre-election, the Ukrainians pushed some of their best fighters and best equipment into Kursk and took Russian territory. They did that to show President Trump, hey, keep supporting us. We have these capabilities. They don't have Kursk anymore. They've been pushed out of it. They're losing ground every single day on the real war. They spend a year planning this attack. And they don't attack a single thing. They don't attack a single thing that affects the war on the ground. They only attack strategic assets that have to do with Russia's nuclear capability.
To include a nuclear facility, which is not being spoken about.
Yeah. So, again, all that, them doing that, that's an escalation. That's not a, hey, we're trying to win this war. That's, hey, what we're trying to do is get a response from Russia that's going to drag the fucking rest of Europe into war. That's what Zelensky's doing. Because that's the truth of the matter is that's the only way Zelensky survives this. Every day that the war is going on in Ukraine, Zelensky gets to keep cashing those checks. The minute this war is over, Zelensky's done.
You know, there's a treaty that says your strategic bombers
have to be out in the open.
But Russia actually removed themselves from that treaty 4, 5, 6 years ago, apparently.
Yeah, but you don't. You know, the reality of that particular. You create an atmosphere, and just because the idea of the atmosphere changes doesn't mean the things within the atmosphere are changing.
Not only that, I mean, do you think they don't have, surely we have underground bases. Iran is supposed to, we know that the Germans had underground bases and they were flying.
Yeah, but we don't have, the reality of that scenario is, when you think about underground structures and underground facilities, we don't have an underground aircraft carrier. We don't have an underground facility that B-52s sit in. We don't need to. There's no reason. Same thing with Russia. Those aircraft were so far in the middle of Russia that they don't need. For example, if the United States, I mean, don't get me wrong when I say, this was just Ukraine trying to drag the rest of the world into World War III. It was smart it was very tactical, and what they did was very inventive, but it affected nothing on the front lines.
There's a declassified document from 1943 that was declassified in 2004, which says in Poland, I don't remember exactly where in Poland, and I'm not certain on the 43 date. I think it was 43, right around there. The Russians took possession at the end of the war, or wherever, right there. They took possession of a Nazi base that was 65 kilometers long by 3 kilometers wide, had 3 separate electric power generating facilities underground, a huge facility. And they were capable of doing that back in the 30s by hand with shovels and, unmodern technology. And we know Elon Musk now has the coring machines, which means somebody else also has that capability. We have senators talking about deep underground bases, continuity of government. It's not far-fetched to think that who knows what the fuck we have underground.
No. Again, we do have enormous capability underground.
Do you remember?
But what we're talking about is something completely different. We're talking about an asset that is not required to be underground, and not only do you not want to put that asset
because
underground,
of such standoff, right? The United States is so long.
But the other thing too is when you think about, let's just talk about the 2 particular aircrafts. They're it's the Bear is what it was we originally called it, and our B-52s. Those were the long-range assets that we were gonna destroy each other with. When we were using the B-52s, in that category, in that form of being able to take out Russia, they were on a 30-minute notice.
Right, we always had planes.
There's planes in the air, but I mean, if that B-52 was sitting on the ground, in 30 minutes it was up in the air. You can't really do that when you're putting things underground. What we build underground is this false idea. What we build underground is this false idea of a world that survives. That's what we build underground. Meaning, like, for example, we talked about this last time, that underground bunker in Virginia that's underneath that hotel, where Congress and the Senate were going to go and they were going to hide out and eat fucking MREs and
the tunnel, the trains ran
and
into
and live out nuclear war. There is no Congress, there is no Senate, there is no president if the country gets fucking annihilated. They're just people. And at that given point, do you think Lance Corporal Bonatz, whose entire family and his entire world was destroyed up on top, is going to give 2 shits what Lindsey Graham has to say? Fuck no. By the time 100 years comes around and the survivors come out of that fucking bunker or whoever, it's going to be the cooks, the fucking soldiers. It ain't going to be fucking congressional members, because again, nobody's going to give a shit who the fuck those people are in that bunker. It's like Bill Gates digging a bunker and hiring a bunch of Navy SEALs. You're going to protect my bunker in the end of the world. Bill Gates ain't coming out of that motherfucking bunker. You think those Navy SEALs are going to give 2 fucking shits about his family? No, hell no. All bets are off. If it really happens, right? None of that stuff survives, but we still build the fantasy of those structures underground. Most of the largest underground cities in the world are in Russia, or let's say the Soviet bloc. Like if you remember the big battle in the big battle in Ukraine, that first one where the Azov battalion guys got surrounded, and they're in
all the tunnels,
and they're in that town. That wasn't tunnels. The Soviet Union built a city underground. That's why those guys were able to survive so long down under. It's not like Vietnam tunnels. These are like real cities. But the other problem that you have with underground facilities like that is, so like when you talk about a World War II facility, you have to maintain them to a very high standard, meaning you're always pumping out water. You have to keep the conditions correct in them, or they're just going to fucking turn to dust, right? And so the reason why we keep building new is not because we're trying to
Well, they just become obsolete.
yeah, it's not that we're trying to build new. It's just that the fucking thing never got used.
Yeah.
You got two people that are maintaining it, so none of the shit works, and so you got to build a new one.
Yeah, you see that on like the urban exploration stuff. Like there's a ton of like broken window theory. There's a bunch of these great YouTube channels. And currently, for the last couple of years, they've been running around Europe getting into these underground bases.
Yeah.
And they'll literally just find a ventilation shaft, and the rebar that's been welded in this is rusted so much that they can wedge into one and then drop into these things.
Yeah.
And dude, they're underground for days underground.
And
everything in there is melted down. All the rubber, all the seals for the air pumps, like nothing works inside these things.
by the time those guys, the thing you have to think about too.
And this shit's from the 60s. It's from the 50s and 60s.
By the time those guys are getting into those buildings, even the ones where the power's still on.
Yeah, the power's still on in most of these.
Because of the way it's interesting in the sense of if you can find a intact bunker.
And they all have giant vehicles in them. There's huge. Someplace there's a giant mountain with big steel doors that they got all that shit in there with.
Chances are the power is going to work because they grid tie all that stuff into the real world, so you're not relying on the generators when you're not in generator mode, right? So even a bunker system that's been abandoned for 50 years, there's probably a good chance that the lights are still going to turn on. And, especially here in America, well, I don't know. Because
they were in these things eating rations from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, there was if you think about during the Cold War, there was a real push to put people underground. Hell, you could go to the basement in most metropolitan cities and find what were those things called? Those rations, the civil defense rations.
Yeah, because the tubs.
We used to really think it was going to happen. Now, it's still a possibility, and the government still spends money to put things underground. But at the point of people going underground, the B-52 is no longer relevant because it's already conducted its mission. Right? It's already flown to its terminal location. It's already dropped its bombs. They don't care about the crews at that point because the world's over. So those guys are gonna, land
the same
somewhere.
Thing with the missile silo guys, right? When they only have 30 days of food in that motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean there's a point where it kind of doesn't matter. It's the same thing with all these people that think they're going to just fucking live underground.
It's said now that the current modern nuclear weapons won't have a half-life, right? You won't have the radioactivity. They say that you can drop these, destroy these places, and then re-inhabit them without the fallout and the wind patterns and
You're
stuff.
still going to have, it just depends on how they're detonated. We do mostly air bursts, and air bursts are better than ground bursts because that's where you're getting that dissemination of radiation through the dirt. But I mean, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are thriving cities, and those technically were really dirty bombs. Those were dirty bombs.
And how powerful compared to today's?
Oh,
like not
firecrackers.
Even, like not even
yeah, they're firecrackers.
Hundredth of it.
They're firecrackers. How long would you have to stay underground? It depends. It just depends on how bad it is and what they use. The problem with radiation is I could be giving you deadly amounts of radiation right now.
You wouldn't know.
And you'd be like, my skin. What's going on with my skin?
My hair falls out, my teeth fall out, my gums start to bleed.
That's the problem with radiation. So when people are like inhabitable, well, just because you can live there doesn't mean you're going to live there long.
So real quick, while it's in my head before we move to something else, I want you guys all to look up Lindsey Graham Ladybug. Just check out Lindsey Graham Ladybug. Google that. Go ahead and look that up, Randall. You're going to love it.
It sounds like Lindsey Graham wrote a kid's book.
He's a raging homosexual, and he has sex with men all the time.
Whatever,
and every time he goes on one of these trips, he goes to Thailand. And Thailand...
No, you're thinking of Cory Booker.
No, also Lindsey Graham.
Oh, okay.
Also Lindsey. Look up Lindsey Graham Ladybug. So, there are different levels of underground bases. So when they have these underground bases, a lot of times they're very remote. They don't just build one beside it. They actually core far underneath it. Do you remember the guy, he was on Joe Rogan. The FBI picked him up at an airport. I believe it was in Italy. And they were these underground exploration guys. They were urbex guys. And they started running through like old UK and London and stuff, right?
Yeah,
There's
I know
a
the guy
whole
you're
underground.
talking about, yeah.
And he said, we'd explored so much, we finally found something that went through something else, right? So
Yeah.
we broke through this rock wall, and lo and behold, here's a whole nother place that nobody knew existed. And they did that several times. And he said, originally we were going through like cabling for the electric company. And then we got into cabling for like communication company. And then we got into something else. And that's where the problem arose. We were into deep underground military bases. And we found old military infrastructure that nobody knew was there. And then we start 30 feet underground, and then find something else 100 feet underground, and then all of a sudden we're 1,000 feet underground. And that's like there's all this shit that you think. And if you look at, are you familiar with the book 1 Second After?
No.
There's a book series called 1 Second After, and there's 3 more books, right? And I think his name was Fortune that wrote it. And on the latest book, the 4th book, there's this whole like Mount Weather system, right? And they know that it's being controlled, and the continuity of government and the corruption is in this base, right? And they finally get into this base somehow, and they think that that's the end of it. And what they come to find out is there's a whole group of people underneath them, the deep government. So there's what we think we know. There's even more shit, below it. Who knows? That's fiction.
Yeah.
That's fiction.
The issue you have to come to terms with is, if you're layering something like that, you're layering the cake. Is resources and assets, right? There's only so much resource. There's so much assets, and so again. If I found a bunker that they built in the 50s, and then there was a bunker under that, well, that would have been the 80s bunker. They're not going to use the 1950s bunker anymore because it's too close to the surface.
Right.
We have stuff that'll touch it, and then you go underneath that, and then there's probably a Elon Musk bunker that's underneath that. They're not using the 80s bunker anymore. The only reason why you would even do that, for example, I'll use a good example is like when people talk about the Colorado airport or the airport in Colorado, Denver airport.
Yeah.
And they talk about all that.
It's the shape of a swastika.
Oh my God. But we'll just talk about that airport in the sense when people are like tunnels that go places we don't know and all this stuff. Well, it makes sense. And the reason why it makes sense is because it's an airport, so you're already going to have infrastructure set up for the airport, meaning there's already mass power going into it. There's already backup generators that are supplying the airport, right? When they made the airport, they're creating a large amount of dirt and shit that has to go away, debris, all that, right? And so all that
signature from space,
all that fucking leaves. And then the next step that you have to think about is, especially when you're talking about a real complex, like a real complex that's really going to be used, it has to be at a transportation hub. There has to be a way to get to it. And what better place than an airport in the middle of fucking nowhere?
Right.
Next to no nuclear targets.
Heard all the truckers say there's an underground highway that you drive into a mountain, and then you can move multiple states, like Colorado's connected underground to California. And have you heard any of that?
I mean, I've heard you say it, but I haven't. The reality of it is again, who's the number one underground guy right now?
Probably Elon. I mean, if we know him,
the Boring Company, right? And even his shit, like he's the guy. Even his shit doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work well. Yes, if you put one fucking car in his little tunnel and you do the little route that he has, it works for one car.
Do you know who Ian Carroll is?
No.
You know who he is. Everybody hates him because they say that he's a Nazi, right? He speaks out against the Jews in Israel. He speaks out against Israel. And
bodybuilder guy?
No, Candace Owens. You
Candace,
kind
yeah.
of on the same page now, right?
Yeah.
That's her thing. So they banned all Ian Carroll shit. They unpersoned him for a long time, unbanked him. This has been going on for fucking years now. Well, he goes on Candace Owens' show, and she has given him a platform. So he comes on and does a show now, I think daily, and he does it calling it the Candace Owens Show. And he talks about this. In an episode I watched this morning, he was talking about, he does not like Elon Musk. He thinks Elon Musk is very insidious and there's always a second, So
He's autistic.
Ian Carroll talked about the Boring Company, and that's where that's where I got the numbers from for the underground base in Poland. I just found anything underground I find fucking fascinating. And if you're doing that shit over 100 years ago, fucking what's the capacity and capability now?
It's, again, you have to put things in perspective. You have to always put things in perspective. Capacity and capability has nothing to do with what we're doing now. We have the capacity and capability to do a lot of things, and yet we don't do any of them. It's not about that. Especially when you're talking about World War II. If you're talking about World War II, that's a different animal. Like, we'll give you an example. Down in New Orleans during the war, a fucking Liberty ship fell in the water every single day.
Why can't we do that now?
We were pumping out a B-24 Liberator in 24 hours. Every 24 hours, a fucking Liberator came out.
Do you think that's real or propaganda?
No, it's fucking 100% real. But that's war capability.
Do we have less people today?
No, we have way more.
So why can't we do any of that shit?
Because, again, war capability. You have war powers. You can force people to do those things. And you don't really, like, when you think about World War II, they had problems. They had labor problems. There still was labor. There were still people, there were still unions and shit that were making trouble for building ships, building aircraft, building tanks. But you still had that, hey, you don't like building tanks, you could go to the Pacific.
Yeah.
Right? You could go. You could always go to the Pacific, right? And so it's a different thing when you talk about what the capabilities of a country is during wartime than during peacetime. The only reason why Germany was able to do what they did is because they were on a wartime footing. Hitler didn't care how much it cost. That's why the Autobahn...
Right, they were never going to pay for it.
That's why the Autobahn, you can land a fucking plane on it today. It's some of the best roads made in the world because he wanted to move tanks.
It seems we can't make concrete that way anymore.
We can. It's the thing. It's a thing, John. It's like, for example, our roads, right? When you look at our roads, we can make permanent roads. We can make good Roman roads in the United States. We could make the Autobahn. The reality is we can make the Autobahn in the United States. But you have to balance a lot of things. And one of the things you have to balance is, I know if I fucking make an asphalt road out here, first off, it's cheap.
It's going to keep people employed.
Every
6
year,
months.
people can fucking come out and fucking fill potholes. It's going to keep people
Have you
employed.
driven to Nashville lately?
No.
It's dog shit.
Yeah.
The fucking you'll be driving down the interstate and there's just no blacktop for fucking a mile.
Yeah.
It's just like scraped concrete with gravel on it. Like I got better dirt roads in my driveway than fucking some of the interstates.
It's all part of the game. So, yes, the Germans were on a wartime footing and they were using a lot of slave labor. So you can dig these great things. Now, think about the unions and the things that are required to fucking do the things that we do now. I mean, they dug a tunnel underneath the fucking English Channel.
Speaking of ships being launched every day, did you see North Korea's new ship
That sank immediately?
Fucking flipped up. Did you see that it flipped upside down and went fucking sank? You know, they killed all those guys.
Yeah, that's again where he's making the mistake. Where he's making the mistake is, I mean, it's hard. It's hard when you're running a country where people believe you are the living God. Okay, because if you're the living God,
well, they don't believe it. They're just beat into it.
They believe
They're
it.
starving to death.
So it's hard to get anything right. Meaning, the reality is, if Kim was smart, or he probably is smart.
Well, the theory is that he's not even alive. Remember when he was in surgery, and then he was brain dead, and then they saved him, and then his sister took over.
They would immediately replace him. That's not how the Communist Party works.
There's some other thought that South Korea, that whole little upset in South Korea, that China is actually so far embedded into South Korea that South Koreans being about to be flipped to communism, and it's all going to be North Korea. Have you heard any of that?
Yeah, it's hard to put a thumb on anything. It's hard to put a thumb on anything Chinese outside of China.
Why do we give a shit
China's never successful outside of China.
Why do we care about South Korea?
Well, we care about South Korea because it is the thorn in Chinese side.
Okay.
That's why.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And they make cars, I guess.
Yeah.
So
apparently, like Daewoo's over there and Hyundai's over there and shit. Maybe it was you somebody was telling me that you just get maybe it was Brandel telling me that when you live in South Korea, you just get summoned to work. When they need to build something and Hyundai needs employees, you basically have a 90 days where you're going to go and you're going to live there and you're going to work there and you're going to build and do your basically like being your 1 weekend a month for National Guard kind of shit. And that's how they're able to build that. They require those people. You have to show up and you have to work and you have to do the labor line.
Sounds like contract work. But the other thing that most people don't understand is South Korea is still at war.
Correct. They never
they're on a war footing. Like if you go to Seoul, everywhere you look, it's a fucking bunker and barbed wire.
Aren't we under a bunch of emergency war powers acts right now in the United States?
No, it's all patriot bullshit.
So what's the new?
You can't be under War Powers Act if you've not declared war. So it's all patriot bullshit.
So Patriot Act 1 and then the second one, and then they just apparently passed another brand new one right now that just happened, the Palantir Act. Only it involves AI, and then there's a protection in there that there cannot be any limitations or any controls put onto AI for the next 24 months. In that big beautiful bill, have you heard any of that?
No.
Yeah, and then the thought with the drones, these were supposed to be run by AI, right? A dude drove all these in multiple trucks apparently into Russia, 150 miles or so.
Well, what they did is they actually shipped those boxes to a warehouse. They shipped those boxes to a warehouse, and then they used contract Russian drivers, not affiliated with Ukraine, meaning just a contract truck driver, and said, "Hey, this." They were disguised as tiny homes, prefabricated homes, and so they're like, "Hey, this is where you pick this up. This is where you're going to drop it off." And then on the way, they're driving on the way.
Have you seen any of the video?
Yeah, on the way they're like, "Hey, by the way, just park here in this car park, and we'll do the transfer there." And so the truck drivers are just parking in these car parks.
Are they all in one place or multiple
locations? And so the truck is just parking in the car park, and then the fucking tops are coming off and the drones are flying out. The truck drivers had nothing. They said it
looked like smoke coming out, but it was actually just so many massive drones.
Well, no, they also
after the fact
burned them to the ground. Yeah.
They self-ignited. Yeah, like some.
Yeah, it was a great again, greatly executed covert operation.
They keep calling it Russia's Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, I mean, again, be careful people need to be careful what they're listening to and what they're seeing.
Didn't they say that on wasn't that January 6th?
They need to be careful what they're listening to. First off, these bombers that they destroyed. Yes, they're part of the strategic Russian. They're part of the strategic Russian nuclear deterrence, right? Like they're kind of like our B-52s. Not even close, but kind of.
Doesn't Russia have the most ICBMs?
Yes. I think we beat them by a little bit. But again, they have these strategic nuclear bombers that were all built in the fucking 60s and 70s under the Soviet Union.
Still pull the wire kind of shit.
They're fucking prop planes. Can't be rebuilt. So they can't rebuild them because they don't build them anymore. It's like, it would be like if the Chinese, let's just imagine for a second that the Chinese are going to attack the United States, and they're like, we're going after all the strategic reserve aircraft in the United States, and they blew up the boneyard in Arizona, right? They didn't. The reality is, strategically, they didn't do anything to the Russian capability to create nuclear war because those planes are obsolete. The F-15 Eagle would intercept those things before they even left fucking Russian airspace.
Somebody was saying on the live the other night, tanks came up somehow, and they were talking about some country, and somebody goes, "Yeah, that country has 10 tanks. 10. Like we have 5,000 sitting out in the desert right now, just like ready to turn on. Like all we gotta do is put batteries and fucking jet fuel in them.
We have more than everybody. Doesn't matter what it is. We have more than everybody. But I will say this: the thing that the United States isn't. I don't think we're really grasping the fact that what Ukraine did basically say what Ukraine has continuously been showing people is you still need a multi-million-dollar tank to win wars. You still need it. You cannot win it without it. Drones are not going to win this war. If that was the case, Ukraine would have won the war yesterday.
Do they have a little micro drone that'll take out a tank?
But
do they?
But that's what Ukraine is showing everybody. You still need billion-dollar pieces of equipment to win war. But with a $500 drone, I can kill your fucking billion-dollar piece of equipment.
Can you?
Oh, yeah.
Are they taking out tanks?
They're taking out tanks with fucking FPV drones. They're just strapping fucking RPG-7s to them.
And it's stopping tanks?
It's stopping tanks.
Our tanks?
Yeah. Well, the drones that the Russians are using to take out our tanks are bigger. They're not FPV drones. But again, it's always about cost benefit. If I have a fucking multi-billion-dollar ship, and you use a remote control boogie board to sink that ship, you fucking won. There's no way I can replace that piece of technology.
So the thought right now is that with these drones and this drone strike that just happened in Russia, it has basically made our aircraft carriers obsolete.
No.
Because you could just use a drone swarm like this to massively attack an aircraft carrier and sink an aircraft carrier.
That's, again, you have to think about what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is using drones tenfolds bigger than anyone. Like, they are the reality is, if you're Department of Defense, you're sending people over into Ukraine to fucking soak up everything they're doing with drones. They are the NFL of drone use. They're still losing. Tanks are still being deployed on the Ukraine is not going. Ukraine's not going, "Hey America, fuck M1 Abrams. Just send us all your FPV drones." They're not saying that. They're saying send us more fucking tanks, because you cannot win without that heavy equipment. The only thing drones provide you with is a flexible air asset that you can use instantaneously.
And they're almost all fly-by-wire now, I heard.
Oh yeah, because the jamming's too good. So, have you seen there's actually some pretty good Russian, again, I'm sure it's happening on both sides, but Russian drone flying to a target, and then a Ukrainian drone comes in behind it, and it just follows it until it gets at the right angle, and then he's like, clip, and then you just see the drone go, and crash.
All right, so you looked it up. Why do they call Lindsey Graham Ladybug?
Because he has moles all over his taint and anus. And he told the escort, "Those are just my little ladybugs." At least that's what the gifted minds of Reddit had posted a news article on.
Reddit? Everybody knows Reddit is a fucking psyop, bro.
No.
Yeah, Reddit is controlled by the NSA.
Do you know there's a wiki page out that's for conspiracy theorists, but it all links like original information. So I can't remember the name of it, but it's like, it's wiki something. I wrote it down, and I don't have my notes out here. But it looks like an old website. It's very old message board kind of. But like this dude's like, I looked it up right here. And of course, he's like, that's where I always go first, because there'll be crazy shit there, but they have links to all of the original information to support it. And it sounds like it's worth looking into, whatever this is.
Where we at? We were fighting in Russia. Fighting the Russians.
So they bombed Russia, right?
Yeah.
And then they asked the spokesperson for Russia, well, what do you guys plan to do about this? And he said, wait till tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's come and gone 3 times. We're 3 days tomorrow now.
They did the typical. They did a typical response.
Can they not respond? Perhaps.
No. Again,
maybe Russia is so fucking like, you have all these governments that we think are such superpowers, but maybe they're only superpowers because people believe they're superpowers.
In 1983. So let's wind the clock back. In 1983, we knew that the Soviet Union was going to collapse. We knew it was going to collapse because we used. It was actually the Navy that did it. The Navy was taking reconnaissance photos of Russian ships that were patrolling in the Atlantic and the Pacific, and it was just normal shit. They were just taking normal shit photos of these ships. And they could see because of the new clarity that they had, with their cameras, they could see the disarray. They could see the disarray and the damage that was on these Soviet ships, meaning teak planks that had holes in them, and they could see this happening. And so we knew in '83 that the fucking Soviet Union was done. Again. A lame tiger still has teeth.
Sure, yeah, can still hurt you.
We have a bunch of motherfuckers. We have a bunch of motherfuckers in our Congress and other places in the world that think that the best thing to do is keep poking. Now,
well, isn't that just so they can continue to make money off of the industrial military complex?
Here in the United States, I don't know why France would rattle the sabers, because they're not set up the same way we are. I don't know why Britain would rattle their sabers.
Nobody in Europe can do shit, but it seems to be Europe that's really pushing this. Like, without the United States, none of those countries even fucking exist.
I think that what they understand is they have to say this shit in order to pretend like they're tough guys, right? They're all fake paper tigers that are pretending like they're tough guys. They're doing that because their big older brother is still standing behind them. If Russia attacks France, or if Russia attacks Britain, if Russia attacks fucking Poland, we're not going to stand out. They all know that. They know that that's the precursor for what America needs to get full hardy hands on this motherfucker and send real troops. That's just, they know that. So it's easy for France to be like, we're going to kick your ass, Russia.
We're going to send troops. What did they send? What did they send?
They
like
know
200 troops?
They know that the only teeth in the game is us. Now, I'm not saying that to try and boast that somehow America is better than everywhere. We aren't better than anybody else. We have just been doing war since the end of World War II. Nobody else has. They've all been living the good life. They're free medical benefits. They've been living the good life because we have been providing the blanket of security necessary for all that shit to happen. And so now, because they have forgotten what their countries look like after World War II, they think they're tough when they're not really tough. They don't have the capability. I mean, Poland, let's just go with Poland. Poland probably has the best capability in NATO.
Poland also has the least problems because they're not overrun by people not from their
Poland might have
country.
the best capability because Poland is training and arming like it wants to fight. Nowhere else is doing that. Like, Germany's not doing it. France is not doing it. They're not training and acting like they want to fight. Yeah, they're spending some money, and they got the Foreign Legion, but they're not training and acting like they want to fight.
Yeah, but isn't
Poland,
50% of their Foreign Legion actually Ukrainian and not fucking currently representing France?
They're fighting in Ukraine. But even Poland's not ready to. If you have to look at it from a very pragmatic perspective. If the Poles were ready to go toe-to-toe with the Russians, they'd already be doing it.
How big's Poland?
Tiny.
How many people would you say?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't even garner to guess that. But again, if they had it, they'd already be doing it. They wouldn't be asking anybody for permission. They wouldn't be like, they'd already be fucking going toe to toe with the Russians. But they don't have it. None of them have it. That is why none of them have fucking committed troops, really committed, declared war against Russia, because they don't have it without us. That's why they're doing everything they can right now to create a more global problem than the localized problem that it is in Ukraine. This is a local problem. It's not a global problem. It's a local problem. And if they can't handle it, tough shit. Ain't nobody... Look, if Canada decided tomorrow that they were going to fucking attack America, and somehow they managed to take some states, French paratroopers wouldn't be coming to save the day. British soldiers wouldn't be coming to save the day. Mm-mm. No, it would be America. You need to handle your shit. That's your shit. That's in North America. So fuck them. I mean, I have nothing but respect for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have fucking done tremendous shit, but they're losing the war because the war is on the ground, and they are losing that ground every single day because people forget who the Russians are. The Russians, the Germans pushed the Russians all the way back to the Ural Mountains. All the way back to the Ural Mountains. They destroyed all their manufacturing. At one point, the Russians had 20,000 tanks that went up against 4,000 German tanks. You know what happened? The Germans annihilated them. But you know who won the war? The fucking Russians did. The Russians put their flag above the Reichstag. The Russians, not the Germans, the Russians did. Because, again, there's a mentality where they don't care about the sacrifice. They'll, whatever, we're going to continue. And the problem, this is kind of like the same problem that the Israelis have, is Ukrainians sending drones into these bases in the far reaches of Russia. Like, there are places in Russia, kind of like the war on terror here. There are places in Russia where this Ukraine war is not affecting them at all. Like, it's not even in the zeitgeist. People are still getting coffee and doing their thing. And Ukraine just...
There's places in Ukraine like that.
Yeah, but Ukraine just attacked those places. You're going to have people in those places. That are like, we need to kill these Ukrainians for attacking us here in fucking... Right? You're creating a fervor to continue the fight. And then the reality is people are always talking about the fucking... the peace talks are going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, Zelensky executed this attack, and then the next day went into the peace talks and said, fuck you, we want everything. Well, that's not how peace talks works. It's not, people need to understand the art of the negotiation.
So what do you think's coming from Russia? Why have they not done anything yet?
Well, they did. They responded. They attacked key military targets. Ukraine said they blew up a bunch of houses, but they did it. They did respond.
I don't think they have since this. Mm-hmm. They did prior to it.
No, they.
Why don't they just ICBM Kiev?
I don't know why they have. Me personally, I don't understand why. I don't understand why there's any place within the confines of the Ukrainian border that the Russians haven't touched. I don't understand why. Because, again, as you know, there are certain cities, there are certain places you can go to fucking in Ukraine that is the fucking dark side of the moon, right? That were vibrant, real cities.
It's just rubble.
And it's the dark side of the moon now. So I don't understand why Russia hasn't done it. It may be Putin's calculation in the sense of... Remember, he's still calling this their special mission. Like, they're not comparable terms. They're not comparable terms, but this is Russia's war on terror. Yeah. That's all. So he said this is a war on terror. Now, if I start carpet bombing Kiev, I'm actually broadening the war. And I don't think Putin is ready because again, I give Russia a lot of credit. I'm giving a lot of credit. I'm not giving them credit for good equipment, fucking good training.
Just heart.
Just fucking when the chips are down, Russians fight. Like Russians fucking fight. Ukrainians are fighting too.
Yeah.
Again, they're just as hard, but it's a 10-to-1 ratio. You're not going to win that way.
When you said all these little NATO countries are like, punching out, they're relying pretty heavy on that. What is it, Article 5 or whatever? Once you hit one of us, you hit all of us. They're really holding on that. Meanwhile, you have Trump many times is like, why are we even in NATO? Like that's a fucking pretty risky gamble right there.
It is a risky gamble, but you have to understand that if Poland, I'm going to use Poland because Poland's really on the front line, but if Poland or let's say Air France or
sure
British troops, if Article 5 gets thrown up in the air,
if that's even what it's called, I don't know if it's
but if Article 5 gets thrown up in the air and NATO gets activated, Trump has no say. He has no say.
Did you see
we're going to war.
Did you see Lindsey Graham say Trump has no say? There's 3 levels of government, and Trump's not the only level of government. Did you see that shit?
What I'm saying is, it's no different than if people probably don't remember this from his first presidency. Somebody asked him why we haven't pulled out of Iraq.
He said we can't.
We can't. The military-industrial complex won't let me. At the point of a Pearl Harbor somewhere in fucking Europe or a Lusitania somewhere in Europe. I'm not saying that Trump won't have a say in how it's going to be executed, but he is going to have to execute going to war against Russia, and he will execute that. But there won't be an opportunity for him to go, we're not going to do it. He just won't.
So Lusitania, what was the sister ship to the Lusitania?
Queen Mary?
Was it Queen Mary, or what's the sister ship to the Titanic?
That was the Olympia.
Got it. That's the one that they say is actually the when they look at the radar imaging and the pictures, the windows are not correct for that to be the Titanic that is on the bottom of the ocean. What happened with the Lusitania?
German submarine U-boat sank it.
U-boats. Mm-hmm. So when you say like Russia can't build those bombers, or we talk about old technology that we don't have the tooling for any longer, I always picture Battleship. Have you seen that movie, Battleship? Mm-hmm. I liked that, as corny as it was. Like those 2 old dudes putting the powder charges in the battleship to fire the guns.
Have you ever watched any of? Have you ever watched a museum history of the New Jersey?
I have not.
There's a guy on there that just goes through all that, and he actually does a breakdown about like.
Apparently, those 2 dudes were really battleship guys.
Yeah, but he always does a breakdown of like how long would it take
to get this ship underway?
How long would it take to get this ship underway? And it wouldn't happen like it happened in the movie.
No. What's the answer?
The answer is it would take months, because it's not when they shut those now New Jersey, Iowa.
You hear that?
Huh? Helicopter.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear a fast rope hit the ceiling any moment now.
Yeah, there's usually not helicopters right here. I don't hear gravel hitting the buildings yet.
New Jersey, Iowa, Missouri. Those ships they're still considered inactive service, but they shut down everything on board the ship that is not necessary for. So they're not ready. They're not sea ready. You couldn't just fire up the engines and go. So, but again, we're in the same boat when you think about it. Like nobody's building B-52s. We don't build B-52s anymore. There's not a factory in Iowa where they're like, turn on the lights.
Right, we don't rivet anymore.
Get the generators going. We're building B-52s now.
Yeah, we glue shit together.
Could the United States, if for some reason, do that again? Yeah, but it's going to take years. I mean, 1941 happened. We weren't really in the war. Till 43, like meaning full production planes coming off the assembly line every fucking 24 hours. We weren't really in the war for another couple years. It'd be the same thing here. Could we build B-52s again? Of course. It would take years to get the factory spun up. It would take years to get the fucking, dust the fucking blueprints off and shit, and we could. But we don't need to, because we have a fucking boneyard full of them, and we just, every couple years, we drag one of those motherfuckers out of the boneyard, throw some paint on it, some new electrical gadgets, and she's back in the air. That's why we keep the boneyard, because there's tons of aircraft in there that are still...
Yeah, that's where all those A-10s came from.
Yeah, still worthy.
Aren't they standing down the A-10 again? Putting the A-10
Yeah,
back to bed?
they're talking about it. They're talking about it. The Air Force hates it.
Do they?
Yeah, it's not sexy. That's the problem with the A-10 is it's not sexy.
Oh, but not the pilots. The pilots
Oh,
don't
the
hate
pilots.
it.
I don't know. I don't know if the pilots hate it. Like anybody that has been...
I know the fucking CAS guys like those things.
Anybody that gets support from an A-10 loves an A-10. And if you're a ground combat guy, you love the A-10 for the same reason people love the Sky Raider. It's about the loiter time. When F-15 Eagle comes on station, like if you're in the shit and an F-15 we'll use the F-18. F-18 comes on station and they're like, we've got bombs, we're ready to drop them. You drop them bombs and that F-18's gone. He ain't hanging around. He's got to get back to the ship, get gassed up, rearmed. Where a fucking, an A-10, it can circle the battlefield and be like, what you want me to blow up? You don't need me to blow nothing up? Okay, I'm just going to be over here. I'm going to be circling this hill over here. You got something for me to blow? And then an A-10 come in and blow it up. It's the ability to loiter. When you think about a stealth bomber, you think about a F-22 Raptor, F-35, they have no loiter time. They can't hang out on the battlefield.
I just watched a video. CEO of some new air company, aircraft company, stood up. I don't know how long it's been in business, but they produce drones. And he said the exact same thing you said, that these drones are to move things from shore to ship for resupply, and from ship to shore, people in combat for resupply, because we don't have a pilot, and it can stay in the air longer than a normal aircraft can. And it can land without people. We don't have to have people to run these things. And somebody brought that up the other night. Like, we never did hear about the drones. I go, we know what the drones were. All those drones. That's exactly what Scully said it was. That's what that is. Those were our drones. Trump said, we know what the drones are, and there was never a question of it again. It was about running those routes and seeing how they would deliver. And that those are what's being used. They're currently using those drones to resupply from ship. We don't have to send, aircraft and shit any longer.
We're still using aircraft. We haven't got to the drone point yet. But again, if something happens tomorrow,
you're going to see a lot of shit we don't know we have.
You're going to see a lot of shit, because it's always, the reality of it is from a war footing. Even if you go back World War I to World War II, the time frame is not that far, right? The time frame is not that far apart, but the technology advancement that happened from the beginning so you think about in 4 years. In 4 years, the United States went from horse cavalry. When World War II broke out, we still had dudes with horses. By the time World War II was over, propeller pilots were transitioning to jet. 4 years. That's all that took. But that's because of war. And what happens when you have to expedite that process. Same thing with you look at Ukraine.
Yeah, all the EPA regulations, all the OSHA shit, everything stops.
Yeah, you just, because you're on a war footing. You can do things that you can't. You can do things. Well,
you can tell the lawyers to fuck off.
It's not just that. It's not that you can just do things that you can't normally do. There is also this thing that people don't understand is you think we throw money around now. Go to war. We were spending billions during World War II. During World War II. People don't seem to understand that. That number was already out there. We were spending that money to fight World War II. Hell, we put more... The United States, because of the Liberty ships again, We put more tonnage of cargo on the fucking ocean floor than has ever been done before. Not because we wanted to, but because the Germans were sinking so many of those Liberty ships. That's billions of dollars that's sitting at the bottom of to keep London, to keep supplies going to England, to keep England from falling under the fucking boot of the Germans. Yeah, all bets are off once we go to war. And even the reality is, you think about it. The day after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese Navy Imperial Commander Yamamoto was like, hey, it's only going to be a couple years before we can get our ass kicked, right? Like because he had come to the United States and he had driven around the United States and had an idea of the capability of the United States. Is like, we can't compete. It's the same thing still. There's no one out there that can compete. Like, no one has the fucking capability to compete because of the structure and resources that we have available to us. Like, when you think about Japan had to go into Indochina. They had to go into Indochina because they didn't have the natural resources or the oil resources in order to fucking survive.
When we interred all the Japanese, right? We put them all.
Democratic president did that, by the way.
So they told them in a 2-week period, you have to sell your businesses, sell your houses, and report to internment camps. Do you know what the lead up to that was? What the final catalyst to that was when that happened? There was a Japanese pilot that crashed. Something happened with his aircraft, I believe Pearl Harbor, and he crash landed on an island. And on the island, there was 1,000 people that lived on this Hawaiian island, right? He crash landed, and they came to his aid and his assistance. A couple hours, 4, 5, 6 hours go by, and it has come out over radio, or it's been reported that Pearl Harbor's been bombed by the Japanese. So they take this guy into custody, unarm him. They've left him armed this entire time. And there was 2 Japanese people that lived on this island. And they came to his assistance and actually helped break him out of custody. And some things ensued. A man got shot, and while shot, this man disarmed this guy, got a hold of the pilot, and killed one of the husband and wife, or something happened, right? And that reporting is the final catalyst when they said, okay, anybody who's Japanese in the United States, supposedly, I heard this the other day. When are we going to
You can't put a finger on something like that, because when we look at, and I'm just going to explain this real quick.
Sure.
When we look at history, we look at it from our eyes.
Correct, not theirs.
And we want a thing. We want to be like, oh, this is the pin that was pulled from the grenade that blew up the world.
I think Fat Electrician's where I heard this story.
Yeah, because we're looking at it from a 2000s era perspective. We don't understand the social construct that was happening during World War II. No, let's just be clear about this. No one protested Japanese being interned because there was a general dislike of the Japanese in general before they bombed Pearl Harbor. So when he was like, hey, we're going to put all these motherfuckers in camps and we're going to take all their shit. And nobody in Congress is like, what? That's so terrible, because the propaganda was already out there. So
sure.
I mean, they were ready.
Did Xi Jinping go to college at Harvard?
Pooh Bear? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. His daughter's currently.
Well, the Communist Party actually said that
it's
Harvard
their party
is
stool.
It's the party stool.
Not meaning like, roo-ha, fucking beer tonight, like the Communist Party, not school. Fucking party. Yeah. Yeah, I was weaving those two together.
This is the thing that blows my mind. This is the thing that blows my mind, and if I was a senator or a congressman, I would be arguing this right off the bat. I would already be arguing this. What blows my mind is that the government gives Harvard $1.
Right.
Not, and I don't want to say Harvard.
Well, he said they're going to stop funding Harvard.
I know, they're going to stop funding Harvard.
And all these fucking Democrats and these fucking judges put forth all these lawsuits that say he can't fucking do that, right? Every time one of these happens, they've been arresting those judges.
No, wait, here's my thing. Is it free to go to Harvard?
No, of course not.
It's not free.
It's about to be, because nobody's going to fucking colleges
You have to
anymore.
pay to go to Harvard, then what the fuck is the government doing? The government should not be.
Well, that's the biggest scam.
Yeah, it is a scam.
It's the biggest scam.
We
They have
shouldn't be paying the
they have all those endowments, and all that money's tax free. All that
Well,
fucking property,
again,
all that shit's tax free.
I don't care. Again, John, I don't care if you graduated from Harvard, if John graduated from Harvard, and you now own Coca-Cola, and you're like, you know what, my alma mater,
Right, but
I'm
not
going to
the
give them.
government.
I'm going to give them $100,000 to build a whatever. I don't care. The government shouldn't be paying. And I'm saying Harvard. No fucking higher education should get a fucking dollar from the government that
Right,
requires
but your
payment from the
congressmen
students.
pass all that shit.
I know,
And then the
fuck those guys.
congressman or Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama show up to give a speech, and then they pay them $1 million for being on the campus for an hour. That's the payback for that happening.
I know, but again,
And then all those deans and all those fucking
Yep.
upper echelon of those colleges reside on the campus in multi-million-dollar fucking housing and structures, right? That they don't have to fucking pay for. Yeah, it's all the buyback.
As soon as the government started backing college loans,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
cost
that's
of
exactly.
school went completely through the roof.
It fucking went
Yeah,
tenfold.
and that's why you now have colleges.
You have vacant college
that
campuses.
caters to education ideas that don't
They're
provide.
they're really communist.
Yeah, that don't provide
Yeah,
anything.
Yuri Bezanov said that's exactly how they will do it, and then fucking
Yeah,
30
fuck-
years forward, that's exactly what they've done.
I mean, I don't care what, like, I don't care if Harvard University wants to bring a bunch of terrorists or whoever, it doesn't matter. They want to bring a bunch of whoever's to Harvard and give them education. That's on Harvard, not the U.S. government and not the U.S. taxpayers.
I could
We
be
shouldn't
wrong.
be
I
paying
believe-
a fucking dime to them.
I believe Bin Laden and all of his family went to Harvard as well.
I mean, it's possible. A lot there. I mean, again, there's a lot of
So
foreign exchange.
did you see the incident that happened in Colorado Springs a couple days ago?
Yeah,
Right? You see the initial reporting on it?
yeah, white guy,
White guy, MAGA supporter,
Yeah.
firebombed a bunch of Jews.
of course.
What did it turn out to
I
be?
don't. I like if just pretend me.
They whitened the picture up. Did
Yeah,
you
I
see
know
the
they did.
initial, like just like they did
It's
to
not the-
Rogan?
It's not the first time they've done that.
Yeah. So
but just imagine that you and me are hardcore Democrat liberal pundits, okay? And for the last, I don't know, the last 5 years, we have been reporting the news. Brando runs into the newsroom and goes, "Oh my God, a white guy just threw Molotov cocktails on a bunch of Jewish people. You guys need to report it." How are you as a fucking liberal Democrat pundit? How are you not going? Maybe we should wait and find out what the real news is before we report this, because we've been wrong so many times.
every
Like
time.
so many times.
So dudes from Egypt. Did you see what the FBI said?
I don't know. I know they rolled up his whole family though.
He was on our radar for the last year and a half. They knew he was there.
At this point in our just think in the last 10 years. I really think that the Inspector General, when something like this happens and the FBI goes, he's been on our radar for the last year. I think the Inspector General should really be like, okay, we're going to fire you, we're going to fire you, and we're going to fire you.
How about you're all going to jail for
We're gonna
fucking
fire,
36 months?
at least fire somebody. Like the nepotism. Now again, well, how does that work? I say nepotism, but then again, John, if we think about the Patriot Act and we think about all the stuff that's gone on since September 11th,
That's against U.S. citizens.
Yeah,
That's
but-
for U.S.
yeah,
that doesn't protect us.
but what I'm saying is, when you think about all the stuff that's gone on since then, do you think that the FBI could say that about anyone?
Of course.
Like the FBI could come out tomorrow and be like, "We've been watching that guy for a year.
Yeah, because they've been collecting data on everyone.
He bought a
They
bug
just-
zapper at Walmart this weekend."
They just yeah. So Egyptian.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Scream Free Palestine.
Free Palestine. Yeah, it
And they
doesn't
have rolled up his wife and his daughter, who apparently is in college somewhere. And he was here on a travel visa, right? And had been here for an extra 3 years or so. Something like that. It might even be longer than that. Mm-hmm. Just wild shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, again, I always try and be like, if the shoe was on the other foot. You can't convince, like, the reality is, like, he attacked people at a Holocaust ceremony.
Some of them were from the camps, apparently.
You can't attack them with Molotov cocktails and say Free Palestine and expect those people that you just attacked with Molotov cocktails to go, oh, you know what? This is a horrible crime. Maybe we should free Palestine. No. All you're doing is reinforce.
He'd be better off standing at the gate in Egypt, fucking preaching it.
But I'm saying all you're doing is reinforcing exactly whatever.
Well, when you get to the rawest form, you have Muslims against Christians
or Jews in this particular case. But again,
did you see France? France has fallen was all the headlines.
Yeah,
right there,
they say that all the time.
Yeah, they say it all the time.
They say that every fucking couple of months.
Yeah,
it's.
But what is it? They've let savages in their country.
It is inept liberal agendas that do not work when it comes to running a country, and those affect everyone, and so that's why they have the problems they have, but it affects the people on the bottom rung the most, so that's again why they have the problems they have. I mean, whatever. Again, we got enough problems here.
So what do you think Russia's going to do in the next couple of weeks?
Continue to fucking gain ground and continue to fight.
How long till the United States is pulled into it? For real, like officially.
We need a pretty good. We're gonna need a pretty good Tonkin Gulf incident. We're gonna need a pretty good. We're gonna need something. Now, there's a lot of Russian pundits who are talking nuclear weapon. I don't know. I feel like if Putin was going to use a tactical nuclear weapon, he had an opportunity with Kursk. Like when Ukrainians took over that little bubble in Kursk, the Russians have always said that the precursor to nuclear war would be to defend Russian ground. So, in my opinion, he could have used a tactical nuclear weapon in Kursk to end that pocket of resistance, and no one could have said shit because, again, it's just Russia. You're just blowing up Russia. He could have used it there. They're not losing the ground war, so it kind of doesn't make sense. Like he could. The reality is, for some reason they're pushing. They're trying to gain ground, and I know that always happens when peace talks are involved. Whenever there's peace talk, the worst time to be a soldier is whenever they fucking start. Yeah, they start talking about peace, but they're gaining ground. Yeah, everybody's gonna be like, they're paying a high price. They're still gaining ground, guys.
They're paying a high price with inexpensive pieces.
They're still gaining ground. That's the point that matters. Not we're at a stalemate and we're killing the fuck out of Russians every day. No, you're losing feet. It may be inches, but they're still gaining ground. So because the war on the ground has not turned against Russia. Meaning, if the Ukrainians were pushing if the Ukrainians were pushing on all fronts everything back to Russia, then there's a reason to use a tactical nuclear weapon. But you don't use a tactical nuclear weapon when you're still. I know everybody's going to be like, my God, they're not winning. When you're still technically winning, you don't use it. There's no reason to use it.
Did you hear about? You know about U.S. Steel, right? We were about to shut down. U.S. Steel was about to all be bought. They've been piece by piece buying U.S. Steel. Nippon, who is Japanese. You hear Trump came out and said, no, that's not fucking happening. Yeah. Sale's over. Everything's being returned.
I don't know about... I kind of don't have a problem selling it to Japan, but...
Japan's our friend right now. In the past, Japan has not been our friend.
Well, I mean, and we We coaxed them with some bombs that had fucking VCRs and radios in them.
Did you see Arkansas? So China's been buying up farmland all over the United States.
Oh, Arkansas is the first one to ban them.
Arkansas is the first one said, not only ban them, you don't own it anymore.
Yeah, you have to. Again, you have.
That's Huckabee.
You have
Sarah
traders.
Huckabee Sanders there.
You have traders. You have traders within the United States. So senators, congressmen, presidents. You have traders within the United States that are willing to sell their soul for anything. You have to look at things like, for example, farmland. Farmland is a strategic asset. Shouldn't be for sale. It shouldn't be for sale by any adversarial country. So no, China shouldn't be allowed to buy a fucking food stamp. Nothing. Not an apartment in Seattle.
Yeah.
China, because they are an adversary country. But because you have people in this country that no different than the guy who sells Cadillacs to the drug dealer. You have a strategic asset. You can't be giving it away to our enemies. Period.
So Arkansas also was the first one that said, hey, if you're on food stamps or government assistance aid,
get to work.
You have to come in for an interview and prove that you are unable to work.
Some states have already done that.
So yeah, some tried to do it too, but she was the first one. Arkansas did that. Arkansas also, at the border checks at the borders of Arkansas, stopped everybody coming through in a semi truck and said, read this to me. And if you couldn't read it in English, you were pulled out of the truck and you no longer operate or drive this truck.
I don't know if that's smart. We do have a problem. We do have a hiring problem for long haul truckers. If you're talking about Americans that are doing long haul trucking, most of them are senior citizens. Mm-hmm. The young guys that are getting in the game for long haul trucking are mostly immigrants, because it's a job that you don't have to deal with anybody, and you don't really need to speak English to drive a truck across the fucking country. So, I mean, I know I'm talking about strategic assets, but I'm also talking about people who are here legally.
Well, I think that's the thing. These
if people here,
are not
if
necessarily here,
if
they were legally here under Biden.
If you are here legally,
it's the
then you should be afforded all the opportunities.
It's the same reason
as
you have
everybody else.
pictures in all the truck stops right now showing you to put your shit in the toilet, not in the fucking trash can.
Well, again, some people, there's some places in the world that still don't have toilets.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
those are savages.
Yeah, all the best intentions of the world, they just may not know. Like one day,
that's it. That's just what it is.
I mean, one day you may go in the bathroom and be like, what the fuck is with these 3 seashells? And then everybody in the office is going to be like, fucking savage. Oh my God.
All right, let's wrap this up. We're going to do question and answers, guys. We have a Patreon. We have a membership here. If you are listening to this and this seems like current events, that's because you're a member. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, this all happened 3 months ago, that's because you're not a member.
We're already in nuclear winter. What happened?
These come out to non-members after the fact. If you'd like to catch them currently and you'd like to be able to participate and ask questions when we post those questions for members, that's $10 a month. That's all it is. It's $10, and you just click the membership or the join button here on YouTube. We're going to go over to Patreon, where they ask questions, and we basically do the video we just did based off interaction from the members there on Patreon, and that's what we're about to do.
Let's hope they don't ask questions about Ukraine.
Why?
Because we just talked about it for a half hour.
But you'll always have a different. You'll always give a different.
Well,
it's different.
I can say different stuff on Patreon.
Yeah, we can say stuff we can't say here. All right, guys. Thanks, and we will see you next week.